Hello, my name is Sandra Voltero, and I'm your host for Be Prepared. Be Prepared is our new show that will be coming up in June. It's a show that will be presenting health, wellness, and all kinds of information about safety also, so that we can educate our public on how to stay prepared. And that is the name of our show, Be Prepared. We are part of the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps, and we are here in Burlington since 2006. And in getting out there and recruiting members, I find out that people don't know who we are. They say, who is MRC, or who is the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps? So that is what this program is about. This program is about, first and foremost, letting people know who we are, what we do, how we got started, and get to know some of the people involved. And so I'd like to introduce my guests first of all. I have Susan Lumenello, who is the Director of Public Health here in Burlington, and she's also our Unit Director for the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps. And next to her is Libby Walendziewicz, and she is a member of the Board of Health. And you want to start off and tell us how we got started here in Burlington, Libby?
Sure. The concept of reserve corps was born out of the events of 9/11 in 2001, and the government, I guess you could say, encouraged local communities to start medical reserve corps to respond to probably something we didn't know. You know, that there could possibly be another attack or whatever, and that's how we got started. And we kind of organized just before I think it was the first flu clinic in 2005, and after that we started to organize and become more formal about what we were doing. And I kind of got involved in the BVRC way back then, and we had a steering committee of 5 people that actually sat down and hammered out, not quite literally, but got together the bylaws for the Corps, and things about its membership and who would be leaders and that kind of thing. And that's how we got started in 2006. The BVRC itself is an initiative of the Board of Health, and the BVRC acts in response to initiatives on the Board of Health or from the Board of Health. Mm-hmm. And in an emergency situation, they would be called up to give aid. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we had the year we had the water main problem. Mm-hmm. This is a good example. All of the restaurants and businesses in town had to be visited and given information about how to properly restart their water, and tell them that they couldn't do anything until the water came back and it had been properly restarted. So that's a less obvious medical type response activity. Most of us are familiar with the flu clinics being the major thing, and
yeah, so when
that's what we do.
That's what you do. Well, that's how we got started. That's
for
basically
sure.
What we wanted to know. I think at the time, wasn't it, the president at the time had said they wanted more volunteers out there.
But they wanted it on the local level. They wanted it to be extremely community by city, whatever.
So there are a number of MRC organizations.
There are.
Yeah.
There are several in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is divided into regions. We're part of Region 4A. Mm-hmm. We're members of Region 4A, and there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. No 4B anymore. I guess we're Region 4, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Region 4AB now is the Emergency Preparedness Region, which has 2 MRC units, federally recognized Medical Reserve Corps units, mm-hmm. and the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps is one of those.
Yeah.
One of the important things that was identified after September 11th was that we needed volunteers who were credentialed, trained, and ready to respond. So one of the things that we do with our volunteers is train them so that they can respond in an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm. And so, Susan, how do we prepare our volunteers? I mean, We can't just send anybody out without credentials. Now, what do you mean by credentials? What do they need to do?
So if they hold a professional licensure, such as a RN or a doctor, we make sure that they have that license and that it's up to date. And we also get, each volunteer has to go through a CORI criminal background check through a system called Mass Responds. So the state helps us out on that. So every new volunteer needs to sign up on maresponds.org to become a volunteer, and that's when their background check is done.
Yeah, and as a unit director, what is your responsibility mainly?
So my main responsibility is the Board of Health is the sponsoring organization for the Medical Reserve Corps, which as the Director of Public Health, that makes me the unit leader of the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps. And my responsibilities for that is mainly budgeting. So we get grants, both state and federal grants, and reporting to the state and to the federal government on our activities. And also for deployment. So if we ever had to respond in an emergency, the unit leader would be the one that would call up the volunteers and organize them to respond.
At the direction of the Board of Health.
Right.
As the director of the Board of Health, yeah. And you're on the Board of Health.
I am.
So you should know.
I should know, you're right.
Exactly. Okay, so how do volunteers help in our community? Anyone?
So volunteers help with public health initiatives. So we have many things going on at the Board of Health. We have, as Libby already mentioned, the annual flu clinic. We have 50 volunteers who come out to that. We also have household hazardous waste collection where volunteers come out. We have the Red Cross blood drive. So we partner with the American Red Cross, and our volunteers help at those blood drives. And any public health initiative that's coming up is something that the volunteers can help with.
Good. Do you have a lot of volunteers that are very active?
We have 145 volunteers now total, and probably about 40 to 50 of those are active volunteers. By active, I mean they come out at least once a year to volunteer for something.
Okay. And that's all we ask. Is for our volunteers to come out at least for one event per year, and that's it, and come to our quarterly meeting. So it's a small commitment for a really a big satisfaction of helping other people and being available to help other people. So in our quarterly meetings that we try to educate our volunteers. We have a lot of subject matters that would keep our volunteers trained and ready to be deployed out in case they need to be. So we try to keep them interesting, and we try to give a little substance so they can have a little food while they're there. Nothing too elaborate, but enough to keep them busy for a couple of hours. Our meetings aren't that long, but we try to make them as enjoyable and as informative as we can. So what are some of the requirements in order to join, Susan?
Anyone can join, so you can be a medical or non-medical person. We're actually looking for both. So for every medical person, we need at least 4 to 5 non-medical people to support that person. So it's not just, you don't have to be a medical person to be part of the Medical Reserve Corps. After you become a member and you get accepted and you get all your credentials checked and your criminal background done.
Well, they have to have a CORI done on them, right?
After that is complete, we ask that they do 3 courses. Well, one is an orientation course. It's called MRC 101, where they learn the basics of the program and what they're going to be asked to do, and the importance of badging and having vests and signing in and out in an emergency deployment. And then we also ask them to take incident command. So that is a course that's through FEMA. It's an online course, so volunteers can either take it online on their own, or we also offer it in a classroom setting. And also National incident management system, which is also a FEMA course, and it's also online. So those are the 3 requirements to become a member.
Okay, is there an age limit?
Right now, the age limit is 18. So one of the things that we may be looking to in the future is a junior medical reserve course. So that's something that we're looking at, but have not established that
We're
yet.
talking about it. I know we're getting some high school people thought it was an interesting thing to get
Yes,
involved with.
yeah.
And as we tell our young people is that it's a good thing to put on their resume or in their college applications that they do some kind of volunteer work with a very worthy organization such as the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps. What are some of the committees that you have involved with the MRC?
So right now we have 4 committees or subcommittees as we call them. One is the training subcommittee. So that is a group of people who work on providing new trainings to the volunteers, what they may be interested in. And we try to have a portion of those trainings have CEUs. So if you're a medical person or if you're behavioral health, you can get CEUs for your free CEUs for your time. We have a public health education and outreach subcommittee, which consists of nurses, and they go out to the public and try to disseminate information. They're going to be at the health fair with the hands-only CPR demonstration. We have a special events subcommittee, and that is going to be that's for any new event coming up. So they'll go out to celebrate Burlington on the Common once a year, and then they'll also work on the volunteer appreciation dinner that we have once a year. And then lastly, we have the volunteer recruitment subcommittee, which you know about, Sandra, because you're the lead person for that subcommittee, and they go out and try to recruit new volunteers, which is what we always need.
Yes. And that's part of the reason I thought of as the chairman of that committee is to start this program, Be Prepared, because it's a way of getting out to the public about who we are and what we do and get more interest. You know, if you don't know who we are, that we're even here, I mean, we're not going to get any volunteers. And we've been going out to the public and a lot of businesses. We've been doing some presentations to some of the organizations. And these are all our ways in trying to get more people aware of who we are so that we can increase our volunteers. How important is it, Libby, that we increase our volunteers, would you think?
I think it's really important, particularly going forward. I think there's a big need for a reserve group of people that can be called on for emergency purposes. And we're living in an uncertain world right now, and you never know.
Definitely, you never know. And what we do is, a part of what we do is we're available to our first responders in the event of some kind of an emergency, like you say. If they need some extra volunteers, for instance, if we have to set up a shelter, our volunteers are trained and ready to go to those shelters and work with everyone there. And we do try to do a lot of trainings that is appropriate for these kinds of situations. So we also work well with our police department and our fire department. And I'd like to show a little clip about some of the ways that we work with the police and fire department. We had an appreciation dinner this past December, which we have every year. We try to give a little something back to our volunteers who have at least volunteered at least once a year. So we do a nice dinner for them, and we have a few speakers, and sometimes we have a little entertainment if we can get that into our budget. Unfortunately, as Susan can tell you, we have limited budgets. We are nonprofit, and we have to go by our grants and so forth. So we can only do so much, but we do like to remember our volunteers at least once a year and do something for her. So this might be a little interesting. Jimmy Tigges, who is a detective at the Burlington Police Department, came and talked to us at the appreciation dinner. I'd like to take a look at that clip and see what he has to say. Could we see that now?
So basically what I'll try to give you an idea of the police department's role. So as far as a major incident, if it's an incident that involves the MRC, chances are the fire department's already involved. If it's that type of incident, where it's not just strictly a law enforcement incident, we would probably be taking a lot of direction from the fire department because they're the incident commander, unless it's a situation where we need ICS, the Incident Command System, and then it becomes a unified command system where we would have a command post with the fire chief or representative and the police chief and their representative, probably with someone from town administration. We'd have a unified command. But in an event that would affect the MRC would probably be an event that we would take direction from the fire department, being a law enforcement incident aside. So basically requesting the MRC at an event would probably come from the fire department as opposed to the police department. But we do want to work with the MRC. We want the MRC to work with us because we found that by cooperating and communicating with different agencies in town, we're getting a lot more productive. We're getting a lot more results. We're working better. Like Mike said, we're now cross-training with the fire department. As he mentioned, in the spring, we're going to be doing an active shooter training. But we actually did a dry run of that about a month ago at the mall. And what that is for them to see how we're going to act, us to see how they're going to act. They do things their way. We do things our way. But it's nice for, in an event to see how one group is going to do this and one group is going to do that, and then communicate about it, talk about it after. So that's why on these large-scale events, especially where the MRC is going to be involved, communication is the key. It's the key to success. With the Leahy Clinic, one of the biggest hospitals in the area, we're doing a lot of cross-training with them as well, because if it's a major incident that's going to involve the fire department, MRC, obviously Leahy Clinic's going to play a role in it. So now we're working with the Leahy Clinic. I just met with the entire ER nursing staff over a course of 3 months, and we now have a really good working relationship because of that communication. So the message I'm trying to say is communication is key. So we need to start working together. I'm going to be the MRC liaison to the police department, so I'll start, coming along to meetings and whatnot, and we'll get those lines of communication going. But as far as an event, basically the police department's role is going to be more security related. We're going to protect the site, protect the staging area, protect the shelter. So we're going to play more of a security-related role in an event like this, as opposed to a medical type of a role like you would be playing, or a support role. So our main focus will probably be security-related. Alongside that, we'll probably play a major role with traffic. Because if it's a major incident, we know there's traffic in this town every day. We have an incident, it gets worse. There's an incident on 93, this town comes to a standstill because people use Burlington to cut through. So security, traffic, we'll work alongside the fire department, the MRC and Leahy. We'll play a major role in coordinating a lot of the outside agencies, part of a regional police department, police group called NEMLEC, the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 48 police departments and 4 sheriff's departments. So basically, if we have a major incident, like we had the gunbrella thing at the mall a few years ago, but what we did is we made one call. We called NEMLEC. And within minutes, and I'm not kidding you, minutes, we had hundreds of police officers at Kohl's, right across the street, the staging area. We don't have hundreds of police officers, we don't even have 100 police officers in Burlington, but within minutes we had hundreds because of this cooperation, this communication, this regionalization. So we had officers from as far away as Gloucester down to Framingham. And what happens is NEMLEC, each department provides about 10%. If your department is 50 officers, you have to commit 5 officers to NEMLEC. But if there's an incident in any NEMLEC town, then those officers get paged out and they go. So that's how we're able to get, excuse me, 100, 120 officers together in a matter of minutes. And Burlington benefits by that, because unfortunately we're busy. So we see, if there's a major event, you'll see Methuen, Lowell, you'll see all kinds of cop cars. But that's because of our cooperation. Again, the key is communication, and the key to success is communication and cooperation. We know what's going on in the world. Just watch the news. Watch it today. It's a different world today. So now we need to work together. We weren't, like I said, we weren't working like this years ago. So we have to look forward. We can't look behind. It's behind the past. We have to start moving forward. We have to work together as one. We all have one goal. So we have to work together to accomplish that.
Yes, we definitely have to work together, and I think he makes a lot of really interesting points. That was a clip from our appreciation dinner that he came and spoke. And Susan, what occasion is it that the Board of Health would be the lead on an emergency?
So the Board of Health would be a lead in a medical type emergency. So if we had to give vaccine out to a large portion of the population or antibiotics, the Board of Health would be the lead on something like that. And our volunteers train for that type of thing through our annual flu clinic, which we use as a full-scale exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And who do you work under? I mean, who do you have to answer to? Who tells you as far as about inoculations in case of an emergency? Where does that come from?
That would come from the Department of Public Health. So they have they manage what's called a strategic national stockpile. So if we needed vaccines or antibiotics in an emergency situation, it would come down from the Department of Public Health through the strategic national stockpile, which is managed by the federal government.
Mm-hmm. And who makes the decision, like if you have to set up a shelter?
So that decision would be made by the town's emergency management director, which is the fire chief and assistant fire chief.
Mm-hmm.
So they would make that decision, and then they would call me, and then if they needed assistance from the Medical Reserve Corps. Mm-hmm. And then our volunteers would go out and assist at the shelter location.
And where are our shelter locations?
So right now we have two shelter locations, the first being the Human Services Building at 61 Center Street. That can hold about 100 people. Mm-hmm. If we had a larger event and needed to open up a bigger shelter, we would then go to the Burlington High School.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, there's a lot involved in that. Does the Red Cross get involved with that also?
So the Massachusetts Emergency Management Association, who the emergency management director would be working with, they would coordinate with the emergency management director, and once they found out that we opened up a shelter, we would then look to them to assist if we had to keep it open long term. So what they tell us is that we should be able to have a shelter open for 2 to 3 days in an emergency situation before we can expect help from outside agencies.
Are we educating the public on how to be prepared in case of those kinds of an emergency? Are we trying to do that? I know that we try to train our volunteers that way, and hopefully they're educating their families. And hopefully we're going to do some of that education on our Be Prepared show here, so that the public can be ready, because we even have to have our animals ready. From what I understand, there's a bag of stuff we need to get ready for them as well. And as a matter of fact, I understand now that we have to have provisions for animals in our shelter. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So yes, it's important to get the information out to the public, and we try to do that as best we can. So we use our website, burlington.org. You can go to the Board of Health section on that to give people information. There's also a federal website called ready.gov, which has a lot of great information for people. And the BVRC has a Twitter and Facebook account as well, where we try to push out all kinds of information where people can get themselves ready in an emergency situation.
That's great. Libby, what are the benefits of being an MRC volunteer, would you say?
The benefits, well, there are a lot of benefits, and I think one of the most important, at least for me, is that I give back to my community, and I'm available to help it, or any BVRC member is available to help the community get through whatever issues are at hand. And there are some social benefits. You get to get together with different friends and people and meet new folks, and all work together for the common good. And then there's the social aspect of the appreciation dinner, and those are just a few.
Just a few. Well, I really appreciate you two coming on our show and giving us information about the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps. And hopefully more people will be watching, and that when folks, volunteers, get out there, and they will be out there on the road again, going out to businesses and trying to get more volunteers, because right now we don't have enough volunteers, to be perfectly honest. As Susan said, we get 40 to 50 people coming out a year to volunteer, and that is really not enough, like we were just talking about. In case of emergency situations, we need more volunteers, because for every nurse, we need 4 to 6 people who are non-medical just to support that one nurse. So I hope that you all will think about it, how important it is to do something for your town as well as your state, and come out and join the Burlington Volunteer Reserve Corps. We will be starting our regular show coming up in June, which is going to provide a lot of information on health and welfare and safety for the community. And we hope you'll all tune in. And I want to thank you all for coming and joining us today. Thank you.